The Mojave County Planning and Zoning Subcommittee will come to order. Please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bradshaw,
Present.
Commissioner Helms, Vice Chair Gillette,
Present.
Commissioner Patillo,
Here.
Commissioner Martin. We have a quorum.
Item number 1.
So this is going to be going over, I'll go back a slide here, our community meetings that we held in Kingman and Wickiup. Both of those meetings were held last month. We'll go ahead and start with Wickiup. So we kind of went all the way up from I-40 down to Wickiup. You'll notice most of the area is this dark green color, which is our rural development area. Wickiup is considered an outlying community, and we don't see any reason to change that at this time. I mean, as you're driving through, if you've ever driven through Wickiup, all the development is right there along Highway 93. There's some gas stations. There's ADOT has a yard there, and that's pretty much it. And so I think it makes sense to leave it as is, as an outlying community, so that if any other commercial development happens along the highway, they would be able to do that without having to do a plan amendment. And other than that, it's a very rural area. There's some ranches out there, things like that. There is a suburban area up near the interchange of Highway 93 and I-40. This is the Silverado area. So there are some platted subdivisions up in there. Staff has not received any comments on this area. And so at this time, we are not proposing any changes. Here's a little bit more zoomed in on the Wickiup area itself. There is some heavy industrial designation out here. That was for a renewable energy project. And then we have this area, again, that Silverado area along Highway 93. You see there are some smaller lots. These real ones that show up like they're a little bit different color. That's because that's BLM property. So it's kind of checkerboard through there with BLM property. This is hit or miss on parcels that fit the suburban lot size. There's quite a few that are larger than 5 acres. However, at this time, we are seeing some interest in the more lot splits kind of in this area. So I think leaving it as that suburban development area makes sense. So we're not proposing any changes. That's pretty much it for this portion. If there's any questions or comments on that, if not, we'll jump over to the Kingman area.
Yeah, go ahead. You want me to ask if the public has anything?
Public or the other commissioners.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions?
Yes, Commissioner Bradshaw here. Can you elaborate a little bit on the heavy industrial, and if we're still maintaining that, if that project is still moving forward, or if that's been.
Yeah, so to my knowledge, that has not been developed as of yet. I haven't heard anything about that project recently. I don't have it showing on this map. I'd have to look into it and see what the zoning is, if the zoning has vested or not for that zone change. I apologize, I don't have that information off the top of my head, but that is certainly something I could look into. And if that zoning is agricultural residential and doesn't match that land use designation, or if the zoning for that project has never vested, we could potentially look at changing that back to a rural development area.
Yeah, I think that would make sense. I mean, if that project has died, I think that it would make sense to revert that back in the general plan.
Okay. Yeah, that is something that we will look into, and we can make that change if necessary.
Do you know
Thank you.
whether or not there was a time limit?
I don't. Again, I apologize. So what I'll do is I'll pull up the resolution that made this plan amendment there should be a rezone right along with it, and we'll take a look at that and see what the rezone was and what those conditions were and if there's any time frame on that.
Anything else, Commissioner Bradshaw?
Nothing so far. After that, thank you.
Any other questions? Do I have any questions from the public? Okay, we'll move along to Kingman.
All right. So for Kingman, we didn't receive a lot of comments, but we did receive some. So we had some that requested changes to specific parcels by property owners and developers, and we'll go over those here shortly. We had one comment for us to be able to work with tribes for cultural surveys and to ensure that the general plans for the county and the tribal general plans align where those borders meet. And then we also received a comment to ban decorative water usage similar to Clark County, like for grass or things like that in yards and heavy water usage. So those are the comments that we received. Staff doesn't have any objection to the changes that have been proposed by the property owners and developers. And the first one we'll cover goes over the area between Interstate 40 and Wallapai Mountain Road, just outside of city limits. We did receive a letter from the city of Kingman that they are, from their development services department, they are also in favor of those proposed changes. And then leaving areas that have a current rural density with the existing suburban land use designations to be able to continue and have future growth in those areas. And then we also have a recently rescinded zoning for an expired development agreement for a master plan community that's just north of Grace Neal Parkway, near Route 66, north of Kingman. And we're going to propose to amend that to a suburban development area to match some of those other designations in the area. And we'll cover that in a little bit as well. So here's the kind of the overall Kingman area. So the grayish blue is city limits. So when we get outside of it, so this yellow area is an area we'll look at here in just a minute. Green is suburban development area. Again, that's property 1 to 5 acres. You'll see in the Butler area, we have some low density and medium density residential. There's a lot of low density residential kind of beyond that. And then we get into suburban and then it gets into rural. I think a lot of that is still appropriate for this area. And we'll get into that a little bit. Some of this area that's low density residential are large vacant parcels. However, we have seen a lot of development closer to Route 66 in this area, especially off of Thompson Avenue. There's a lot of subdivisions that were initially platted back in the early 2000s, and they are coming back and being finished out now. And we're seeing a lot of homes being built in that area. So I think leaving this as low density residential to allow for future growth in that area still makes sense. So here is the first proposed amendment that we received from one of the developers. So again, this is Interstate 40 here. And then we have Wallapai Mountain Road down here. This is for those familiar with Kingman, this is the Rancho Santa Fe subdivision. As far as future development goes, so the city is currently in the process of putting in an interchange here off the east end of Rancho Santa Fe that will provide access to I-40. So that's the first of 2 new interchanges coming in for the city. They haven't started construction yet. My understanding is that construction is going to start very soon. So part of this proposed amendment from the developer would be taking this road that currently just goes through Rancho Santa Fe and extending this road as a future road that will eventually connect all the way up to Wallapai Mountain Road. And so as part of that, they want to keep, so this area in the general plan is currently low density residential, as you can see here. So that's this yellow color down here. So they would leave that low density residential for this area, but they would add some commercial here, just north of the development along this proposed road. And then speaking with Travin from Engel Homes, this area is currently shown as commercial, but as they're working with the property owners in this area, potentially changing this to a medium density residential instead of low density residential. So would allow for a little bit more dense development. That's going to be lots that are range from 6,000 square feet lots to a little bit smaller. They could probably go up a little bit higher than that too. So 7 and lower for that area right off the road. And given the low density residential around it and potential commercial, staff doesn't have any objection to either one of those options, whether leave this commercial or changing it to medium density residential. And Travin is here if you had questions on that. So I don't know if we want to talk about this one in particular, if there's any questions on this one, or you could, I know Engel Homes is here if you wanted to get their comments on it as well.
Any commissioners have any questions?
I do. This is Commissioner Bradshaw again. So looks like the bulk of this area is adjacent to the city of Kingman boundary. So is there some possibility that, I mean, does this affect how we move forward and annexation into Kingman, or are we leaving this out of the Kingman area? I guess the really question is how do we get it into Kingman as opposed to leaving it in the county for the development? It seems smarter.
Yeah. So Chairman and Commissioner Bradshaw. So potentially, I mean, this potentially could be annexed into the city. Obviously, there's a process that needs to be gone through in order for that to happen. That whole process is laid out in state statute. But yeah, that development, that subdivision there, that Rancho Santa Fe subdivision is the city limits for the city of Kingman. So again, if we go back, so we're looking at, this area right in here. So it does butt up against to the city limits. So I don't know. I don't know the city's intentions. I don't know at what point they would be interested in annexing it. But that is a potential possibility as if they go through that process outlined in state statute.
Well, and I guess my question comes down to: is there a way that we could encourage that annexation as opposed to just leaving it in the county for county administration? Because again, to me, it makes more sense for it to land in the city for development.
And I can't speak for the city on what their interests are, or what threshold they'd be willing to go through that process. However, I would say that the city is largely funded by sales tax, and so I think having commercial areas within that development would probably be the biggest enticement for the city to want to do that.
And perhaps we could have Engel Homes have a quick discussion and see if they're interested in moving this forward in the city, or if the county is the best suited for their purposes as well.
Commissioner Bradshaw, this is Travin Pennington speaking. Just for the record, we have had one initial meeting with the City of Kingman city manager to maybe open up the dialogue back and forth about possible annexation. So to answer your question, there is a conversation happening.
Don't the occupants of that area have a lot to say about it?
Yeah, I mean, and again, we've thus far had
That's who you're talking about. Okay.
one meeting with the city manager to ask what could annexation look like in the future, right? And I would just say that I think the city of Kingman currently does not have a property tax. It's funded primarily by sales tax, and so the concept of taking general commercial and placing it in that theoretically can set the stage for future annexation talks. Does that shed any light, Commissioner Bradshaw?
It does. Thank you. And like I said, I guess my real intent of this dialogue is there a way that we can, in the general plan, assist in and directing it to the city as opposed to maintaining it in the city, in the county administration? like I say, it just seems to me it makes sense for it to land as city administration when you're trying to do this scale of development.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and obviously we need to have our general plan match what the county sees for that area. But yeah, I think adding the commercial and that future roadway connection access makes it a lot more enticing of an area for the city to be able to come in and annex it in the future.
Great, thank you. That was my comment on this.
Thank you. Anyone from the public wishing to speak?
This is
This
Trem
is Commissioner
Pennington again.
Patillo. I have one.
What was that?
This is Colin Patillo. I just have one
You
minor
have a
comment.
question. Okay.
I have a kind of a comment to staff. I noticed some of the stuff in a previous slide mentioned some of the public comments were about water use and limiting lawns and that type of thing. I just wanted to make sure that staff was aware the county does have an ordinance on that was written by Supervisor Moss and a committee back in about 2014, and I believe it was passed and still in the books and can be enforced by planning and zoning.
Thank you. Just state your name, sir.
This is Traven with Engel Homes. I would also like to, if I could make a request, is on that map that Matthew had up showing the new road that's going to connect to Wallapai Mountain Road. If possible, and I believe your wheels are already in motion, but I think it would be helpful to show the orientation of the road on the general plan. A lot of times on the general plan, they'll show future roads. And in this instance, I think it would just further be able to cement this idea and be able to show the road that is showed there and be able to show that on the new general plan update.
Yeah, and just to clarify that, so Steph, I apologize, I don't have a full done proposal map, but that is what we're working on. So yeah, what staff is proposing would be to take this and we can, again, at the committee's discretion, we can change this to medium density residential as requested here today, but we would add this road as showing as a future road, and then that way you can see why we are adding some of this higher density and commercial, because there is that future road there, and why we're tying those to that. So that's what staff would be proposing, would be to go along with this proposal as presented, as we don't have any objection to that.
Commissioner Bradshaw here, and I concur with that. I think that the road would be useful and also helping understand why we designated those areas as commercial and or higher density areas. So
Any other questions or statements from the audience?
All right, with that, we will move on to the next one. So this is the area just north of Kingman. So here we have Jaggerson. Just to the west here is where the community college is. As I mentioned, so I just cut off Thompson, but we have these subdivisions out in this area here, south of here, are continuing to be developed. We've spoken with developers about amending the preliminary plat for this area so that this area can be built out as well. So there's a lot of homes being built in this area. And so what was brought up, so we have general commercial here on this corner. There's this general commercial here that is part of a platted subdivision. I don't know how general commercial got there. So we look at changing that to low density residential on that corner there to match. But then the request is to change this parcel here, 310-01104, to a medium density residential designation, which is what we have, this orange down here just to the south. And I will also point out that a lot of the Butler area is really right on the threshold of medium and low density residential. And so staff doesn't have any objection to changing this to medium density residential. Grace Neal Parkway is a roadway that is planned. It hasn't been developed to its full extent, but having medium density residential there with the continued development of Grace Neal Parkway as being a main thoroughfare that would connect Stockton Hill Road all the way to Route 66. I think medium density residential fits that area, and again, staff doesn't have any objection to this change, and we would propose that this change with the update. Unless we have any, so do we have any questions or comments on this one?
Any questions from the commissioners? Okay, then we'll move along.
All right. And then the last request that we received, this is off of Stockton Hill Road, north of Kingman. So we have two different suburban designations here. We have suburban residential, which is basically 1 and 2 acre lots. And then suburban estates is that 2 to 5 acre lots. You'll see a lot of suburban in the area. And the request is to change this suburban estates to suburban residential. So to match what's on the left for future development of this whole area here. You'll see to the south, there's a lot of suburban residential, and to the west as well, given the proximity to those other suburban residential designations, and the desire of the property owner developer to be able to move forward with new development in this area. Staff doesn't have any objection to making this change either, and think it fits. Staff believes that it fits the area, so we would propose making this change as well. If there's no comments on this one, the last one is not developer requested. This is staff looking at the area. So again, this is kind of the beginning of that Grace Neal Parkway. The blue down here is the airport. So this is on the other side of Route 66 from the airport. We recently came in and did a rescission. This was just a few months ago of the zoning in this area, because there was a master planned community out here with a development agreement. That development agreement expired, and so we came in and rescinded the zoning because there were specific conditions of the zoning tied to that development agreement. Those same conditions don't apply to the general plan. So while we have the ability to go in and just rescind that general plan, it's harder to justify rescinding the plan amendment that was associated with it. However, looking at it at this time, since we're going through this process, this area hasn't been developed. Most of this is actively being farmed. And so we would propose to change this to suburban development area. So the same green color. So most of the properties are zoned, or all of the properties in this little box here are zoned agricultural residential with a 10-acre minimum lot size, which is a rural designation. So changing it to suburban would still allow for future growth should those farms stop and that property be sold. But I think it would accommodate development that fits this area north of Kingman a little bit better. And certainly if they propose something different, they could always come in and do a new plan amendment if they were proposing higher density than that. But I think the suburban development area is a good middle ground between what's currently out there and happening, and while still allowing for future growth. So that would be staff's proposal, would be to change that to suburban. And we'll also point out a lot of that area to the west is low density residential. I think there's also an argument that could be had to change it all to low density residential. But staff believes that suburban is a little bit better fit, but I think either option could work for this area. So again, staff's proposal would be to change it to suburban. However, we're open to comments or suggestions from the committee.
Any questions from the commissioners?
Yes, Commissioner Bradshaw here. So in this redo of this development area, are we planning to take the commercial area off of the area next to Grace Neal Parkway, and so that all becomes low or medium density residential?
So yeah, you can kind of see the box here. So we do have actively zoned commercial properties just outside of it that are front onto Route 66. So we would leave those. The commercial in here, right now we're proposing to change it. Again, I think there's an argument to be made that you could keep the commercial that fronts onto that Grace Neal Parkway to allow for future commercial development there. I wouldn't have any objection to those amendments there and just change the rest of it to residential and leave the commercial. All that zoning within that box is currently zoned residential, which was part of the thinking of changing all of it to suburban development area. But yeah, so within that box, right now the proposal would be to change all of it to suburban. However, we could amend that to leaving the commercial designations that front Grace Neal Parkway.
I wonder if it would make sense just to leave a strip of some nominal, some useful width, a commercial designation in the general plan just for that opportunity, and then change the rest of it to some sort of. And I don't see whether low or medium density residential. I don't. Makes sense either way.
Okay. Okay, yeah, so we'll take a look and see if we want to change. Staff will take a closer look at that. We can either leave the commercial exactly as it shows within that box, or we could maybe shrink it down a little bit and have it a certain width across the way there, and then we could change the rest of it to that low-density residential.
Good idea. Any questions from the audience?
With that is all I have with the Kingman area. Those are the only proposed changes that we have at this time. So I'm happy to answer any questions or take any last comments. But yeah, that is our presentation today.
Thank you so much. Any questions from commissioners? Any statement?
I have a quick question, Commissioner Bradshaw again. So what about the area with the new interchange there off of 93? Is there any designation that we need to look at in dealing with that specific area? I know most of it's in the city of Kingman limits, but I'm just curious on how that may affect some of our thinking.
Yeah. So yeah, that change to the interchange there is within city limits. So I think the major work is going to be there. I mean, there's road work along I-40 that goes through this green area here. However, at this part, this is a canyon that runs through here. So that green area is mostly below I-40. And so I don't think the interchange changes would affect the land uses of those residential uses down kind of below the 40. So I don't know that we necessarily need to make any changes with that interchange at this time, because the bulk of the changes that are going to be kind of at ground level and could affect businesses and things, that's all within city limits at that stage.
Did that answer your question, Commissioner Bradshaw?
It did. Thank you. Yeah, nothing further on from me.
Right, thank you so much. Anyone else? Okay, then I will close this section and have the call to the public. Seeing no one, having no further business to come before this meeting, meeting is adjourned.